session, um, sometime tomorrow, you'll receive that recording. Um, and the other thing that I did want to mention was if you have questions, feel free and put those in the chat kind of throughout as we're going. I'll collect those, maybe combine some similar questions, and then Holly will have some time for Q&A at the end. So you can come off mute. We can just go through the questions from the chat, a couple different options once we get to that point. But again, the session is being recorded if you do have to hop off or something a little bit early. But with all of that, Holly, I will pass it on over to you to introduce yourself and the IRS to all of our attendees today.
Thanks, Kristen. I am really excited. Thanks for having me. I'm Holly Reed, like she said. I'm a hiring manager with the Internal Revenue Service. I come out of Salt Lake City, and I've been with the service. I came straight out of college about 18 years ago, actually. So I've been here a long time, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I chose to work here and those things. But today we're going to talk a lot about the revenue agent position. I don't know if any of you have seen Stranger Than Fiction, but in that movie, Will Ferrell plays a revenue agent. I don't think they ever use that term in the movie. It's they say auditor or something like that. But it's a fairly, by Hollywood standards, accurate depiction, other than we don't fall in love with our taxpayers generally. Depiction of the job. So that's the job I want to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the pay and benefits, why you should want to work here, the position itself, how to qualify, and the application process. And like Kristen said, I would love questions. So absolutely ask away as you think of them wherever. So, okay. These are some reasons right here that the IRS gave me for why you want to work here. And they're not wrong, right? We have a ton of different people that work here. It's a very diverse workforce, which comes with a lot of strengths and opportunities, and definitely a lot of fun as well. There's a lot of job security. You guys have probably heard about government shutdowns, right? The thing is even when the government shutdowns, they passed a law that says that the federal employees still have to be paid, not contractors, but employees still have to be paid. So this is probably like the most secure job you can have. We have not had a reduction in force.
Just take away other
pretty much the entire time I've been here. So it's been a great place, and right now opportunities for career growth. The IRS is growing. I'm sure you guys have heard about all the funding we're getting, and we'll talk a bit more about that too. But there's also our management is actually kind of an aged workforce. We have a lot of managers retiring now and in the next few years. So there's all kinds of opportunities for growth as well within the IRS as we grow, and also have a lot of our experienced staff leave. And then another big draw is the benefits, right? We have some great benefits that the private sector has a really hard time matching. We have probably, one of the few pensions in an accounting field around that's still left, right? I will get into the health and stuff too, but it's just some great opportunities. So right here's some of the benefits. I'm going to go over the salaries in depth, but I feel like the salaries are still fairly competitive in the accounting field. By far where we're competitive is if you look at the hourly rate. My biggest reason for being here and staying here is the work-life balance. In almost everybody, in almost every accounting field, you have a busy season, right? Whether it's end of month or tax season or whatever. We're a 40-hour work week all the time, and that's fantastic. It means that here in Utah, I have employees that are like, I'm going to finish my day and go skiing today, or maybe for me, I have 4 kids. I want to make sure that I can be there for all the things that they have after school and whatnot and be available to them. So I think we're one of the best hourly rates around, but I feel like it's a pretty competitive salary all around. We also have a new child care subsidy that's come out. The details of it, I will warn you, we'll talk about the grades in a minute. It's really only available for lower graded, so it may not be your entire career, because we do, this position, you do move up the grades, but it's there, which comes in handy for sure for helping pay for any child care that you might need. At some of our locations, we do have like some of the bigger service centers, which isn't necessarily where the revenue agents are at, but there are also even on-site childcare options in some places. A lot of places have 11 paid holidays. I happen to love Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day or whatever your state calls it, because I swear nobody else has it off. It's my favorite federal holiday because my kids still have to go to school. Everybody else is still working. It's just my day to do whatever. And I love that. We start you out, I think it's at 13 vacation days a year. So it's 4 hours a pay period. A pay period is 2 weeks that you start out accruing every year. That's the same as sick leave. So you accrue 4 hours a pay period of vacation time, 4 hours of sick leave, both. That works out to about 13 days a year the first year. At 3 years, the sick leave always stays the same. At 3 years, your vacation goes up to 6 hours of leave per pay period, and at 15 years, it goes up to 8 hours of leave per pay period. So once you get past that 15 years, it actually starts getting hard for me to use all my leave, believe it or not. So there's quite a few at the service that end up taking off a lot of December, which we can because we don't have a year-end problem, busy season. So we take there's quite a few people that end up taking quite a bit of the holidays off because they have use or lose time. Another big selling point for me is flexible hours. So I'm going to warn you guys that the first year of training, it's a little less flexible. We have a really robust training system, which is part of what attracted me to the Internal Revenue Service. And during that time, we pair you with a coach and a trainer and things like that. So it's a little less flexible. It depends on your manager. It might still be more or less flexible depending on how that goes. But after your training, you can basically set your schedule. And I love that. I personally do what we call a gliding schedule where I work 8 hours from whenever I start. So if I want to start today at 6 a.m., I do. And if I want to start tomorrow at 9:30, I do. I can kind of adjust that to fit whatever I need for my crazy household, right? Some people really like to be early. Some people like to be late. Some people like more set schedules. Some people like to work 4/10s and have every Friday off. There's so many things that you can choose to do to set your schedule and have it be whatever you want. We also have a transportation subsidy. So in getting to work, their bus passes are on the government. We can get you on your public transportation to get to the office. Health and life insurance. I have to tell you guys, I have MS and I have a son with a heart defect, and health insurance is really important to me. And we have some really great plans. My family's constantly jealous when they find out how little we're paying and how much benefit we're still getting. I don't have trouble finding doctors. There's plenty available to me. So it's been a really great benefit for my family. Somebody asked in the chat I saw about federal employees retirement system. That is exactly the system we are still on. So I believe it would transfer over. We also still have, so the federal employees retirement system has to do with our pension and the retirement benefits that come from the government. The pension, I believe, is a 30% replacement after 20 to 30 years in service. Obviously, the details matter there, right, as to how much it is. In addition to the pension, we also have what is called a TSP or thrift savings plan, which is very much like a traditional 401k. And we have a similar matching 5% input from the employee is a 4% match from the government. So we've kind of got both of those things going on. The portable retirement savings account it has to do with that TSP as well. Like I say, it's more of a 401k option. Incentive awards, in addition to the salaries, which we'll go over in a minute, we do have bonuses, we do have other incentives, and right now we also have some sign-on bonuses. I know there are sign-on bonuses for grades 5 and 7 right now. I just heard, and I'm currently missing a call to find out. It sounds like we're expanding that to 5 through 12. So that might make more sense in a minute, but it sounds like we've got some hiring bonuses that I don't have the details for yet, but it sounds like as much as $15,000 paid over 3 chunks over the first 30 or 36 months. So let's, and I see that question about in-office and remote. That is a great question that we're going to talk about in just a second as well. So I am here today representing the Small Business Self-Employed Division. there are really three major divisions in the IRS that have auditors. I'm small business. There's also large case and international, and there's also tax exempt and government entities. In a lot of ways, we do the same job. We're all auditors. What we do is we go to taxpayers, we compare their tax return with their books and records, make sure it's substantially correct. In small business, we tend to have, of course, smaller taxpayers and more taxpayers. So I actually really love the variety. It turns out I'm kind of a people person. So an accounting job where I was just in an office counting beans or, what have you, was not going to do well for me. What I love about small businesses is the cases turn over faster and more frequently, and I get to talk to a lot of different taxpayers. So part of our job is actually going to the taxpayer's place of business. We call that being in the field. And so one day I might be in the field with a doctor auditing their business and learning all about them, touring their business, getting to know how everything works. And the next day I'm at a small appliance manufacturer doing the same thing. And I actually really love this continual learning about all the different industries and all the different people. So that's really exciting for me. I like that. Our large case division, obviously works much bigger taxpayers. They often work on teams together, and they go to the big businesses, and they spend longer on their cases and they have fewer of them because they get a lot more technical in general. And then, of course, our tax exempt division works on tax exempt organizations, right? So that might be making sure that charities are 501c3 eligible. It could be making sure that their returns that they file are matching. They handle the tax exempt orgs, but general the general idea is that we're all auditors going out there, and the application links that I will give you guys are actually the three and divisions are all hiring from the same links. So internal revenue agent, that's the name and the title I want you guys to remember. I'm going to take you over, in fact, I'll do it right now, to irs.usajobs.gov is where all of our hiring is really done from. I'm also going to give you my email later because I will warn you a bit about the application process in a bit. But usajobs.gov is where all the federal government jobs are, right? irs.usajobs.gov is where all the IRS jobs are. Now, if you look, I've got this up for you. There are 600 jobs at the IRS right now, and you're like, what? And we open and close positions as we change the descriptions a little bit. So I wanted you guys to know internal revenue agent is the important title that I'm talking about over here. So how do we find that? The best thing to do is honestly to type that in, internal revenue agent. And then the other thing I would recommend, because look, there's still 73 jobs. Which one do you apply for? Select this open to the public thing. It takes it down to 3. And basically the difference between the 3 is just what grade you're hired on at. Okay, so these are the 3 applications for applying for this job. And we'll go a bit more into the requirements and stuff here, but I just wanted to hit on that real quick. Like I say, the links often change. So internal revenue agent is the title you're looking for. And it's a Series 512, if that makes any sense to you guys. So like I say, we plan and conduct examinations. Somebody asked me about remote work. Like I say, in the training period of the first year, it's not really remote work because we have, like I said, we have you paired with a coach. After that, and even starting during that to some degree, your job is in the field, right? We want you at the taxpayers. And with that, that doesn't necessarily mean you're at the taxpayers full time. Some people do that, but one of my favorite parts of this job is kind of managing and scheduling your workload as it fits you. So I can schedule my field days to be on the most convenient days for me. And I can spend other time after training. We're allowed to work 8 days of pay period. So essentially 4 days a week from home. That might even increase. They've got some pilot programs in place to test that. Those 1 off-it days a week are field time counts as office time. So if I'm at the taxpayers, that doesn't, it might mean that I don't go to the office for months actually, because the taxpayer is actually where we really want folks, because that's where they get things done. So I as a revenue agent, what I really love is being able to decide when I'm scheduling things, how I'm scheduling things. We ask the taxpayers for documents. I'm sure you guys have heard we don't call people. We prepare letters for people. So they get some notice, and I kind of work with each taxpayer that I have to schedule how the audit is going to go. We let them know about their rights. We talk to them about how tax assessments are made, how penalty and interest is determined. We give our audit results to them, and then I'm sure you guys are familiar that there's always appeals rights. So we walk taxpayers through the next steps and what is possible if they do or don't agree with us. So that's a little bit about what we do. Training, what we provide, how, this is one of the things that attracted me. I don't know about you guys, but when I graduated, I felt I didn't have a lot of work experience. For many of you, that may be different. Internships are a much bigger thing. And people, I feel like a lot of people are doing a better job at getting experience than I did. A little insecure, and back then it was almost a 2-year training period, and that really attracted me. In fact, my plan was I was going to come into the service, get the training, and then leave and go somewhere else, because this training is really invaluable. A lot of firms want to hire folks who have had this training, right? So I knew I would be very marketable, and I would feel a lot more secure once I had this training. Training, like I say, we've kind of gotten it down to about a year now. It consists of 4 phases, 2 of which have to do with individual taxation. Then we have corporate taxation as the third, and then the pass-through, or S corporations and partnership training, is the last one. For each of those, it kind of starts with a formal classroom training where it's like you're taking your courses all over again, where we teach you some things about the tax code. We teach you some things about procedures. We teach you a lot, test you on it as well, and then we have an on-the-job training experience. So each of those classroom trainings last between 2 and 4 weeks long, and then afterwards you have between 10 and 12, or even 16, I guess, weeks of on-the-job training. During that time, like I say, you have a coach that you're basically spending 100% of your time with, and you're working cases with their help, right? So they're holding your hand and helping you work those cases and trying to give you all the on-the-job experience that they have. So I really liked this, right? I like to be well prepared, and I really liked learning about all of this. Those 4 classroom trainings right now, 1 of them is virtual, and 3 of them are actually, we send you away to some of our bigger sites to consolidate everybody into a formal training. And then, like I say, that on-the-job training usually should include a lot of field time, and generally right now, because we do want you with coaches, doesn't include a lot of remote time. But like I say, there is a little overnight travel. After that, overnight travel kind of depends on how much you want it. If you love it, there's lots of things and positions. You saw there's 600 jobs, right, in the IRS. The revenue agent is kind of the entry in. But if you want to be a specialist in something, or if you want to be an instructor or something like that, there's lots of opportunities. So to where after that first year of training, the travel's pretty minimal unless you want a lot of travel. Okay. So what we're looking for, like I say, this is actually more of a people job than you would think. There's a lot of verbal and written communication skills that are really important. They're also, I feel like, something that we very much learn and teach. It's also about making decisions. I remember for the first few years that I wanted to run every decision past my manager and make sure they were on board with it. And to some degree in training, that's why we give you a coach and things like that. But eventually you're making the decisions, right? You're making the decisions, and yes, your boss is usually approving them, but you're making the decisions based on the code and regs that you know, and the facts and circumstances that you see in front of you. So people skills, decision-making skills, and time management skills. Because like I say, whichever division you're in, you have a handful of cases or taxpayers that you're dealing with at a time, and you have to figure out, and it's different for everybody, how best to manage your inventory of cases. Okay, I know I see questions, but I think some of them will get answered, and then I'll come back and answer all of them. So how to qualify? Basically, you need at least a bachelor's degree. There's a little bit of an exception to that, but basically you need a bachelor's degree. And to some degree, it's easiest if that bachelor's degree is in accounting. It doesn't have to be. It can be in any business field as long as you have at least 24 accounting hours, or it can be in any field, but you need 30 accounting hours. So it opens a lot of possibilities, right? There's lots of people that, got their degree in history and then found that it was hard to find a job in that, got their accounting hours and have come to work for us or something like that. I actually think some of those people are some of our best people because they do come with the other skills we're looking for and not just the accounting. I would say we do a very good job of teaching the tax. So if you're just feeling like you don't know the tax, we've got you covered. We can teach you that for sure. So we don't require a CPA. We don't require a master's. Those things might help you in terms of salary when we onboard you, but they are not required. So it's basically a bachelor's degree. If it's in accounting, that's all you need. If it's in any business, you need to at least have 24 accounting hours, and then it's another 6 in business courses like business law and economics, or any degree but 30 accounting hours total. Okay, questions there about that specifically? No? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go over a little bit about the pay scales and how they work and the locality tables and work locations and things like that. So, because I realize those are big questions. So, first of all, you may have noticed if I click on this one, this is our job description. It says we're hiring, there's 1,800 vacancies in 253 locations. So obviously we're nationwide, right? You can work just about anywhere. Right now they're focusing, I'm sure you guys have heard, right? Like about all the extra funding the IRS is getting. I'm not hiring people with guns. That's a misleading headline that gets out there. I'm hiring accountants, right? But we do have 253 locations we're focusing on. Those are actually our bigger locations. So we have more locations than that, but we're kind of focusing on the bigger locations first. So if you're like, I really want to work in I don't know. Idaho Falls is currently a place we're not hiring at the moment. We have an office there. If you really want to work in Idaho Falls, we might be able to get you there, but that's just not where we might start you in Salt Lake or Boise before we can transfer you to Idaho Falls. So like I say, there are more, but 253 is quite a few, right? Hopefully we can find something close by to where you want to be. So as pay goes, if you Google OPM pay scale, the first thing that pops up is these tables. So the Office of Professional Management manages federal salaries, and there's a locality pay for every kind of area, right? So if you live in Atlanta, you have a very specific pay scale right here. If you're like me and you live in Salt Lake City, there's this rest of the United States is the last category here. So if you don't fit in one of those, just go to the rest of the United States one. I realized as I'm about to pull up this slide here, this is actually the 2023 pay scale and I didn't have time to fix it. Before this, we did get a 5% raise about, so it's a little bit higher again. So this is an example of the rest of the United States pay scale. And you're like, this is a lot of numbers. What does this mean? So the revenue agent is a career ladder position. So we can hire from the outside, well, really at a grade 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, or 13. That's a lot of numbers. I don't know why we skipped 8 or 10, guys. I have no idea, but we do. So 5 through 13, basically, except 8 or 10, we hire you at one of those grades. And then basically, the ladder is 5 through 12. So 5, if we hired you as a 5, a year later, assuming you're not completely failing, you automatically go up to a 7. A year after that, you automatically go up to a 9. A year after that, you go to an 11, and a year after that, you go to a 12. Now, there are still 13, 14, and even 15 grade positions available. It's just that after the 12, you have to actually compete for them and apply for them within the service. That's those 600 other jobs that you saw, right? So the automatic ladder is 5, 7, 9, 11, 12. Now, if you were to stay, which obviously 5 through 11, you don't stay there much. But let's say you hit your 12. Usually, not always, we'll talk about this in just a second, but usually we hire you at a step 1. Then if you stay at 12 and you don't have an interest in applying for any of the other positions, then after you'd go to step 2. After another, you'd go to step 3. The first 3 jumps are 1 year apart. The next 3 jumps are 2 years apart. The last 3 between 7 and 10 are 3 years apart. Okay, so I kind of like it because it like you've got a guaranteed raise for the first 5 or so years, and then you've got more guaranteed raises. They just start to get spread out a little bit. There's also ways to kind of jump through those, but that's beyond this at the moment. So you all are like, I don't want to get hired as a grade 5 step 1. That's a pitiful salary, right? No, I totally agree, right? That's generally not where we're hiring you. So let me explain a little bit. Like I say, the job description that I had in there has the specific qualifications for each grade. We can hire you at any point on that ladder. And like I say, there was actually the external 13 as well, if you have a lot of experience. So basically that's what determines what grade we would hire you at. Is if you have just your bachelor's and no experience, it's probably a grade 7. I don't see a lot of 5s right now. If you have really terrible grades, maybe we'd hire you at a 5. But generally, no experience, just a bachelor's degree is a grade 7. If you add either, it gets a little more complicated which we add, right? If we add just a master's degree but no experience, it might be a 9, maybe an 11. If you add experience but no other degree, it can just range. It depends on what your experience is, whatever. My biggest suggestion is read the job description and don't be afraid to use some of the same words on your resume. If you're like, I totally qualify for a grade 11, make sure you put in your resume those things that it says we're looking for in a grade 11. So at least here in Utah, I don't know how it's going, but most of the people we're onboarding at the moment are qualifying for 9, 11, or 12, or even 13 right now. So it just depends. Like I say, I know we've had a hiring bonus for grades 5 and 7, but I think it's expanding to everybody right now. So I'll try and keep you posted if you talk to me later about this. But that's what I hear for now. Okay. So experience in terms for these grades where we hire you on, experience can depend on lots of things. It can be outside experience, it can be other federal experience. So I think I see somewhere in there. If you're working for another federal agency and you're currently a grade 9, then absolutely we would count your grade 9 experience as grade 9, and we'd probably hire you at an 11, as that's the next one up. So it's a year in each grade. And then because I see it in the chat, like I say, so to go from step 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, those are 1 year apart. And then to go from steps 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and 6 to 7, those are 2 years apart. And then to get to 8, 9, and 10 is 3 years to each of those. Does that make any sense? There are, if you're doing really well, like I say, we do have a bonus system every year. If you're doing really well, you can select, if you qualify for it, what we call a quality step increase, which is getting your step instead of the bonus, right? So it's kind of like your bonus is spread out a little more, but you maybe skipped 3 years until your next step, right? So there's some things to do that can kind of move you along those steps. Okay.
And just to clarify again, Holly, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
you move like 7 to 9, 9 to 11, 11 to 12 in the
But
earlier years, correct?
yes. So whatever we hired you on, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, those are automatic. Okay. So if we hired you on it as a 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, within 4 years, you'd be 4 or 5 years. I'm an accountant. I can't do math, right? Within 4 or 5 years, you'd absolutely be a step 12. That's of course assuming that you are not failing, but I've rarely seen people not get their grades. That's pretty common to get those. So I'd say it's pretty automatic. So yes, definitely you move up those grades, and so it's 5 through 12. You just skip 8 and 10 for some reason. I don't know. I'm not going to complain about skipping one, right? So I didn't ever ask too many questions about why we did that. So guaranteed a 12. And then, like I say, there are plentiful opportunities to apply for 13s and even 14s right now. 14 is also about where management starts. So that's where you would take the leap into management as well. if you wanted to go that route. There's once you have gotten to your journeyman level of a 12 or 13, there's all kinds of opportunities, right? You can go into management, you can go into a technical specialty, you can be what we call a subject matter expert. You can go, there's just a lot of opportunities. And so, like I say, there's lots of 13s and 14s and even 15s available to compete for at that point. You just have to be selected. Does that answer it, Kristen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, so how do you apply? Well, like I say, the easiest thing is I just gave you that website, and I'll go back to that in a second. We do have recruiting events. So if you go to irs.usajobs.gov. There's also a place where you can click on events. And at those events, for example, tomorrow we have one in Santa Rosa, California. You can actually register for the event in advance. Go there. They can actually jumpstart things. So this is the bad news, you guys. This is the federal government. It is a bureaucracy, and the application process can take a little bit of time, right? So there's a couple things that we are doing to circumvent that a little bit. We are getting better at our HR practices. We've got things consolidated a little bit so that it's running a little smoother. But also, if you know somebody, we can jumpstart things. Right now, you'll notice that all of those announcements said direct hire. And what that means is that managers can jumpstart the process. It turns out I don't even necessarily need you to put in that application. If somebody sends me a resume and their transcripts, I can send it to HR and get it going. So the key there is you got to get it to a manager, right? So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you my email address. I'm willing to help you guys out with that. Get it to the right manager. And definitely if you want to hire for the Western area, which is where I'm a part of, I'm definitely the person to help you with that. Other than that, I can get it into the hands of the right person, right? But like I say, there's also these recruiting events. So if you live in the Santa Rosa area, look it up, find the Santa Rosa event tomorrow. They're having events like this all over the country on almost a weekly basis. So like I say, they are on there. I think I heard there's going to be one in Seattle area on the week of Valentine's. So like I say, it's just nice because we can jumpstart it where they can literally do the interview right there, take your transcripts, do your fingerprints, and have you ready to send to HR. Now it still takes a minute. I'm just going to warn you, our HR department is not super fast, but if we get all those things done, it takes a lot of the time off. We can't, I wish we could, we sometimes have something called pathways open, and I hope that it comes back. But unfortunately, we can't start the process until you have at least a bachelor's degree on your transcript. I wish I could, because if you're like, I'm graduating in 2 months, if it takes a long time, could we just start now? I wish I could. I really could. And to some degree, we can do an interview and decide we like you and have it ready to go, but I can't submit it to HR until that degree has hit your transcript. And sorry, I just remembered, I meant to, when we were talking about the 24 versus 30 credit hours, I recognize that Western Governors does it a little bit differently. We haven't had a problem with that at all, right? Like each class kind of counts as 3 credit hours. So we're looking for the 8 credit, the 8 accounting classes, or something like that. Okay. We love Western Governors graduates. In fact, one of my colleagues I was going to pull on the next time we do this for sure, because he's probably my best employee. So just in case any of you were concerned about that. Okay, so where are we hiring? Like I say, that there's that comprehensive list in the job description, but really it's every state. Turns out we have people in every state, right? The highlighted ones here, they say they're highlighted because some of the smaller PODs we're not hiring at. Only the smaller PODs, right? So like Colorado is highlighted here. There's like 3 locations we are hiring in Colorado or something like that. So I think, like, of course, Denver, Grand Junction, and maybe something else is hiring. We have more locations than that. It's just those smaller posts of duty are not currently on that list. So, but like I say, there's some in every state. You could look it up, or like I say, the easiest thing to do is go look at that job description. Has the full list of 253 places we're hiring. And And this is my last slide. So this QR code takes you directly to irs.usajobs.gov. We do have sbse.recruitment@irs.gov that you can send questions or whatever to. And then I've included my email address here, which is holly.l.reed@irs.gov. Questions, resumes, like I say, I'm willing to forward them to the right places. But with that, I know there are some questions I haven't gotten to. Kristen, do you have like a place you want me to start on those, or?
I have a list of the questions. I've pulled them
Okay.
out of the chat. So
Okay.
I'll just kind of go through, and if anybody from like the group wants to ask a question verbally, feel free to raise your hand. And once we kind of wrap up whatever question we're talking through, I'll let you come off mute and ask that question verbally. But a lot of the questions, as we kind of anticipated, were addressed throughout the presentation, which is wonderful. But one thing that came up a couple times was professional development for revenue agents. And if somebody wants to go back and get their master's or get their CPA license, is that supported? What does that look like with the IRS? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So the answer, I was an accounting professor for a little while, and I always told my students it depends is always the right answer, right? And it's the answer here too. So let me explain that a little bit. So the IRS has had and will continue to have lots of programs to support these things. By far, the biggest one for me is the flexible schedule, right? So if you want to go back and do some classes that you schedule either in person or online or whatever, we can have a schedule that supports that. Um, Through the years, they have had different things. They used to have a tuition assistance program. So I actually went back to school after getting my bachelor's about 10 years in. I decided I wanted to get my master's because I wanted to qualify for a CPA. So at that time, they had a tuition assistance program that would help me pay for that as well. Those programs kind of come in and out. So I finished my master's program about 3 years ago. They said, "Hey, we're willing to pay for CPA study materials." They usually come with some criteria, right? You have to say you're going to stay working here and commit to that, or you have to repay it, or and things like that. In the case of the CPA, it was you had to pass the CPA test within so many months. Now that got a little screwed up because of COVID, so it got lengthened quite a bit. But so there's usually requirements like that, but it's definitely supported. So what programs exist to help pay for those things? It just depends on what's available at the moment. One thing we didn't talk about that we have right now is we have a great student loan repayment program right now. If you're on board, it's $10,000 a year that will pay off your student loans. And then of course you're still open to the public servant repayment loan thing anyway. I don't know the details of that, but you can definitely Google that and look into that as well. So even if we're not paying for it directly right now, you can, get that loan, and $10,000 a year will pay off right now, which is a pretty significant benefit. As for the CPA requirements, definitely it's not required to work at the IRS. That's one of the beautiful things to me about it, but it's definitely still encouraged, right? And it definitely still helps in terms of competing for those promotions and things like that. So I felt it was important. I wanted to go back and do it. It was also just kind of a goal of mine. So I went to do it. Most offices do have managers and such that have their CPAs so that they can sign off for the hours. Our hours here do count. We can usually find some CPA to sign off for those. Obviously, it depends on the office. Some might have fewer or more, but usually we can find somebody to sign off on the hours. So that hasn't really been a problem that we've seen. And our CPAs, one thing, I don't know if this matters to any of you, but since we're a national agency, right? In Utah, they've just changed it a little bit. In Utah, you had to have like a full master's degree, and it was one of the stricter CPA requirements, right? Well, there were a bunch of folks here that were like, I don't want to go back and get my master's. So they applied for California or Colorado or New Mexico, who have slightly less restrictions, because the IRS doesn't care where your CPA license is, right? And we work in all of these places. So quite a few of my coworkers did apply in those states and qualified and did that as a kind of a quicker route to getting there.
Awesome. Great information. Thank you for that. Um, we got a couple questions too about um, find it. Like experience, prior experience. Does somebody need prior experience kind of as that first piece? And then the other side of that, if somebody has a lot of experience but is wanting to transition careers, how is the revenue agent role like structured for somebody like that?
Excellent question. So you don't need any experience. The experience just comes into what grade we hire you at. I also forgot to mention, sorry, my brain goes all these different places. Besides the steps going across, if we decide you qualify for a grade 9, but your salary history indicates that you're making what a grade 9 step 10 does, we can move you across the steps at hiring. Make sure that you're in contact with your hiring manager when that happens to make that happen. It's a kind of a tricky thing, but we've got it down. We know how to do it now. Um, so that's also a possibility. If you're like, this sounds interesting. I'm afraid I might only qualify for a grade 9, but I'd really like, if I can get a grade 9 step 10, that's possible. So the experience, you don't need experience. The experience comes into play to what your salary will be when you start is really what it comes down to. And then obviously more experience might help you compete for those promotions later. There's lots of opportunities though. I had no experience coming in and I've still been able to compete just fine. It sounds in some ways it sounds like I waited a long time to go into management, and that was kind of some personal choices of having 4 kids that I did, right? But I had lots of early opportunities and I could have fast tracked it a lot more. So definitely you don't have to have it, but having it will definitely get you a better salary to start.
Wonderful, thanks. Somebody had a question about if the IRS hires through the workforce recruitment program. So I don't know your familiarity with that program, Holly, but I can share that I have seen on the list of like agencies that look through the WRP kind of resume book that's made available to federal agencies. The IRS is on that list. So some hiring managers at least do look at the WRP list. But again, Holly, I don't know if you're familiar with it or if your team uses that as a
I'm
hiring tool at all.
I'm not super familiar with it. I do know it's on the application stuff. So definitely, I guess what I would say is right now we're hiring so many in so many locations that that's a benefit that might not even be needed at the moment because I think normally it like helps get you in the door, right? So definitely it's there along with veterans preference and there was something else I'm suddenly forgetting. But we have a number of those programs that we definitely look at are a part of. It's on the application. You can absolutely put it on there. Um, Definitely connecting to a manager might even be more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Having somebody who you can talk to, always super helpful.
Yes.
Um, do you have an anticipated start date for like a next training class or any, is it just really dependent person to person?
So back in, so I was hired in 2006, and back then they really tried to have like, we're going to hire this day and this day, we're doing staggered onboarding. So as soon as we can onboard people, we're onboarding them. And that's kind of why, especially the first phase of training, that classroom thing I talked about is virtual, because we are trying to adjust and get people on board faster. Like I say, uh, it can take a long time. And so as fast as we can get people through it, we're bringing them on as fast as we can. And we just start where we are and we work with what we're at. So there's not like a set date anymore.
Okay, got it. Um, And then a couple more kind of similar questions. If somebody is currently living in one location, but they want to move somewhere else in the country and, they're interested in higher, like the opportunities there, would the IRS pay relocation or should they maybe look closer to home and then as they kind of move up, look into relocating later?
That is an excellent question that we get a lot, actually. So so it's easy, especially right now where we're hiring a ton. It's very easily to relocate. People can move basically wherever they want to, besides just reapplying for the position, which is an easy thing to do right now. We also have voluntary relocation programs that are available that they, ask, does anybody want to move, and they try to coordinate things. Even if those things aren't available, we do have what we call hardship transfers. So a friend of mine here, her husband was Air Force. We have a big Air Force base in Utah. She worked for the service. He got transferred to a base in somewhere in the east, right? And she hard transferred to follow him, right? So we have a lot of options. The downside is we usually don't pay for the moves, right? So you can get wherever you want, but it's usually not paid for. There's some exceptions if you move up into like executive service and the executive team, sometimes they do, but.
Got it. And now travel related to the job, is that all reimbursable through the service?
Yes, so definitely just like I think of it as just what we require taxpayers to do, right? So taxpayers have to keep track of of the travel they do, and then they can deduct it on a similar level. Everything that we asked revenue agents to do, they keep track of, and then we are reimbursed. And it's typically non-taxable, of course, right? In large case, sometimes they do hit long-term taxable travel, but usually it's just reimbursed.
Great. A couple kind of final questions I have here, and then of course, if there's anything else, feel free put it in the chat. Raise your hand if you want to come off mute. Um, Somebody put in the chat they've got 2 years of experience preparing ERC returns. Wanted to know if you had any advice about narrowing their search to get to the right person for that area of interest.
I don't know. Everybody wants you right now. ERC is a big thing at the IRS. We're all ramping up to do some more on that. So I don't know. Like I say, the biggest thing would be in each job description, and like I say, the specialties are usually not open to the public, right? Usually, you entry into the more general revenue position, and then the ERC specialist, for example, is usually an internal position. So I don't know if there's necessarily something to apply for right now in that, except that it's big and we're all being trained on it right now to do it. It's going to be a lot of audits in the next little while.
Awesome. Does Alaska still receive a cost of living allowance?
Um, so I don't know for sure what we're talking about there. Every year the whole country gets a cost of living allowance. If they're talking about the Alaska permanent dividends, yes, you would still qualify for that. And the locality pay, like, so I said we got a 5% increase for 2024. It's a little bit different for each locality, but it's roughly 5%. So Alaska does, I believe, have its own locality
Okay.
pay. If that, I don't know. If that answers the question.
Okay. I hopefully they're still here and they can let us know in the chat.
Mhm.
If you have a different degree, like for instance, if you're getting your degree in just general business administration, and so you don't have the accounting credit, uh, is work experience in accounting able to make up for that, or do you have to have the credit to get in for the role?
So that, let me go over and show you guys. In the actual job description here, so like I say, there's where the places it's available. This one's open to the public. There's videos to tell you a little bit more about it. And like I say, this is all the divisions. In the requirements, it goes through in qualifications, the basic requirements. And one of them is I'm trying to find it on this one now. Maybe they took it off. So I'm not sure that we have it anymore now that I'm looking. But it's worth a try, I guess. You could definitely try it. It used to have at 2 ORs right here. So there used to be an OR and experience could qualify. So I'm not seeing that right now. So maybe not anymore.
Okay,
Most of
got it.
that, I will warn you, even then, most of that was open to so our big service centers have lots of employees, right? And a lot of them are lower graded, and a year of experience at the lower graded. So maybe another federal agency or the lower graded IRS service center positions would also sometimes qualify you for these positions. So sometimes it's hard to translate outside service into federal service. Um, I don't know why. You probably do more. Who knows?
Okay. So somebody asked, where are in-person trainings held and are housing accommodations provided during training?
Excellent question. So it used to be we did in person anywhere and everywhere. We got in a lot of trouble with Congress because we sent some managers to Laguna Niguel and they went to Anaheim. Anyway, they went to Disneyland and got us all in trouble. So now they try not to send us fun places. And they're also cost effective. Where our big service centers are, we have lots of training rooms, right? So Ogden, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Atlanta to some degree. Those are some of the kind of the hot spots. St. Louis has been big. We don't have a service center there, but St. Louis has been big recently. Absolutely, just like any travel for audits, the travel for the classroom training is absolutely paid for as well. So usually for those trainings, we actually tell you what hotel we would like you to stay at because they've worked out a group rate and reserved a block of rooms and things like that. Sometimes the trainings are actually at the hotels as well. Where I think every IRS agent in the country, so we do have CPE, we have to do continuing professional education just to keep our technical skills up every year, and it does qualify for CPA credit most of the time if you already have your CPA and you are wondering how to do that. So ours this year is in person, so nearly every revenue agent in the country is going to spend some time in Philadelphia this summer, or actually I think it starts next week, taking care of that, and it's all paid for, and we're sending so many people. We're actually mostly using conference center or conference rooms in hotels to do the trainings. So sometimes they're like, stay here, this is where you're training at, and of course it's all paid for. And usually, so I don't know if you guys have had federal jobs, but usually the way it works is obviously airfare and hotel and all, the like fixed costs are kind of automatically paid for, and then for meals and incidentals it's actually a per diem. So in most cities it's somewhere between $70 and $90 a day that we give you, and that's how much you have for food. If you spend more than that, it's on you. If you spend less than that, you get to keep it. So
Awesome. Okay, somebody raised their hand. So, Saeed, I will go ahead and let you have the floor.
Hello everyone, hope you guys doing well, staying healthy and productive. My name is Saeed. How you guys doing?
great.
Sorry the camera's off. For some reason I'm not able to turn it on. I'm not sure if it's security or something. However, I'm sorry, I just got here. I was in a different interview. How to apply for the available positions?
Perfect. So irs.usajobs.gov is where all of our applications are. Internal Revenue Agent is the position title I'm talking about. There's obviously lots more, but either way, I usually find filtering it to open to public is the best way to go because there's an overwhelming number of jobs.
Right on. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for typing. I'm not
Yes,
good at multitasking that way.
no problem. Thanks, Saeed. Um, okay, are incentives on an annual basis based on performance or both? If so, is there a range for bonuses that's typical?
So there's a couple different kinds of bonuses. Performance awards are the annual bonuses that we look at every year. The top 55% performing in each job description gets a bonus. And the bonus pool, so it varies based on what your performance score is and what your grade is. But basically the performance award pool is 2% of the IRS salary. So roughly 2%, I believe. I'm suddenly questioning that I have the right number, but it's approximately that. So approximately that every is the official performance awards every year. In addition to that, that we have the name changes. Sometimes we call them special act awards. Sometimes we call them managers awards, things like that. These are smaller, but for doing a task. So for example, being a trainer or teaching a classroom instruction for a while or something like that, doing a special assignment might also get you a special act award that is usually a few $100 or something like that. So there's smaller kind of like you did something special bonuses, and then there's the usually somewhere around 2% is a rough estimate of the performance awards.
Great. Another question we got was, are professional references requested as part of the hiring process? If so, are a particular type of references preferred for those who don't have previous accounting experience?
Definitely there's a place for references on the application. I don't necessarily think that they're super helpful. So definitely what I would recommend is even if you don't have paid experience, right? So a lot of people have helped with volunteer income tax assistance, right? That's something we would love to see on your resume. You weren't paid for it, it's still something great. Or if you did a particularly cool and big project in a class, like put that in your education on the resume. So your experience doesn't have to necessarily be paid to still be relevant to the resume and to increasing what you might get from our offer.
Okay, great. Somebody asked if there's any jobs that don't require a bachelor's degree or if there is an internship program that might be an option.
So sometimes we have internship programs, and unfortunately, we don't have any right now. We have had, and I think we will soon have something called Pathways, which is basically where we could hire people without the degree being finished, and it even has counted as internship credit for some people to finish their degree. So it's not a typical type internship. It's usually a full-time position still, but you might be finishing your last class or two while you start the job or something like that. That's not open at the moment, but Pathways is the name of it. Should it open again soon? I did see some other divisions, not the three I was talking about, but like human capital office. So with even besides revenue agents, there's obviously lots of other jobs at the Internal Revenue Service. They hire accountants and auditors and internal auditors and all these different things. Some of them I noticed did have some Pathways opportunities. So if you search for Pathways on USA Jobs, you should be able to find that. In the past, we have also had a more traditional internship programs too. And again, I have nothing on that right now. So I will keep Kristen and her team posted if that changes.
Perfect. And I know we had a couple people who mentioned like Pathways is on USA Jobs. Like you said, I think there's different departments have their own Pathways programs.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked with other state agencies that have had theirs open right now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I think we've got time. Oh, I see Victor's got his hand raised. Victor, I'll let you come off mute, and then we might have time for one more question.
Hi, Holly, and thank you, Kristen. Hope everybody's doing well. Just a quick question. Is there an anticipated start date for the next training classes or no?
We're doing staggered hiring. So basically, as soon as we can bring people on, we're making it happen. So we have all kinds of anticipated start dates.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't mind, Kristen, I'm going to answer two questions I think are important right there. One is, yes, the criminal investigator position is different, and it's absolutely on USA Jobs as well. So just search for criminal investigator. They usually call them a special agent. So a special agent for CI, they will also be on USA Jobs as well. They are also hiring. You can have a gun if you want and qualify, obviously. The other one I saw is about the owning real estate and having your own business. Obviously, I wanted to hit on this just because you can't have your own tax prep business, right? That's a conflict of interest. You can't both be preparing tax returns and auditing them. That being said, everything else is kind of up. So like I say, most financial things, not okay. Everything else, as long as you clear it with your manager, it's fine. We have lots of people that own rentals and come on, and that's not a problem. Also, if you have like an established family business that you already help with the books with, that's usually okay as well. So just be open with it and make sure, it shouldn't be a problem. You just approve it with your manager every year.
Okay. Awesome. I think that's all that we have time for. I know some people had some more questions that we didn't quite get to, so I apologize about that. But what I will do first, let's give a round of applause to Holly. What a wonderful presentation today. So much valuable info. Holly, if it's okay with you, I'll include your email in my message that goes out with the recording tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And so as a reminder, you will get a copy of this recording tomorrow. So if you want to go back and try to figure out, oh, what was I don't remember what Holly said about, the different GS levels, right? I don't remember what we said about what the different steps were in that process. So you can go back and rewatch that specific piece and watch about the job description or whatever it is that you have questions about. We are wrapping up our winter career quest. So this is one of our final events for the winter session, but just keep an eye out. We will, of course, have more sessions coming and hopefully more sessions with Holly and more recruiting for these revenue agent roles. But thanks everybody so much for joining today, and hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
And thank you all.